What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to Celio's Network for a metagame discussion for the Milwaukee 2025 Pokemon TCG Regional Championships coming up soon. I have three guests with me here today. We've got Hunter Smith. Hunter placed top 16 with Terapagos Noctowl at Atlanta. We've got Josh Frink, who most recently placed. Uh, Josh, what's your most recent placement?
I finished 19th at Atlanta.
19th in Atlanta, bang, there we go. And I believe Jake, you finished top 32 or top 64 at Atlanta.
32.
Top
Yeah.
32, there you go. 27th with Dragapult Dusknor. And y'all were all playing a different deck there too. Hunter was playing Terapagos, Josh was playing Guardy, and Jake was playing Dragapult Dusknor. So we have three players, all with great careers and accomplishments. All have different decks they've played to a major already in this new post-rotation format. So we're going to be talking about, what are the popular decks going to be at Milwaukee? What decks do we expect to succeed? What decks, can make it into day two, but then maybe falter off after that? What decks do you need to be practicing against? And we'll also get into some tech cards and stuff like that. So a lot on the way here in this video. Be sure to stick around if all of that sounds appealing to you and helpful for your next major event. So let's kick it off with Jake. So Jake, going into Atlanta Regionals, you played Dragapult Dusknor. So was Dragapult Dusknor the deck that you thought would win the whole event? Did you think it was the safest deck, or was it just the deck that you knew how to play the best?
Yeah, I like did my best to not play Dragapult like in testing, but it just came to the conclusion that the deck was too broken, especially for like the first tournament of the format. Like I felt like people weren't even respecting it then. And I heard like rumblings about like Gardevoir, but I think that matchup like for Dragapult, like with the Dusknor version, it's still manageable. And then like basically the entire field is just yeah, all the Noctowl decks are so free for it with the Dusknor, and I just expected a lot of people to be playing like Terabox, Raging Bolt. The Terapagos deck was getting a lot of hype, so I thought it was just a really solid choice. And the thing that I had the most games on that could actually stand a chance against other Dragapult. And yeah, the mirror is not fun, but it was workable. So I was happy taking that 50-50 and then getting good matchups against basically everything else.
And then Josh, so you played Guardy. You played the same list as Henry Chow, who eventually won the event. So going into the event, did you play Guardy? Again, same kind of question. Did you think it would be the eventual winner? Did you think it was the deck you knew the best? Some combination of the two?
Yeah, so going into the tournament, like the Friday, I was not playing Gardevoir. I came like with the understanding that, for those of you who know me, Alex Szymanski and I always play like random garbage to tournaments. So we were gonna play some Frost deck. Um, I did going in. I gave a class on Gardevoir. I thought it was very strong. It, as Jake kind of said, Gardevoir was the only deck in the entire format that I think consistently beats Dragapult. Um, Consistently, an arguable word there. Like Jake said, the Dusknor matchup is definitely a lot closer than like the straight Pult matchup. But yeah, I ended up being fortunate enough to get Isaiah Bradner and Henry Chow's list the night before the event, and I've played enough Guardy previously that I was like, yeah, I haven't practiced it, but like Guardy's Guardy, and obviously the deck is broken, right? So
And then Hunter, so you played Terapagos, Bouffalant, Noctowl to top 16 at that event. So going in, did you think this deck gave you the best chance to win, the best chance to top 8? Was it the deck you knew the best? What was your choice looking like? What were the intentions behind your choice there?
So going into the tournament, I believe that it had the best meta spread, where I believed it just destroyed Terabox to a point where I could go in, feel confident I could beat all the Teraboxes, as Terabox was very hyped up at the time.
Hmm.
Also, with Clefairy and Bravery Charm, you could just go sweep Dragapults. And also with like Cornerstone, you're able to beat Goldango, where you basically going into the room had a very solid matchup into majority of the room. So I felt this deck would have the best chance for me to win, and it got me pretty close to top 8, but missed it, but pretty happy with how I did.
Cool. So, looking at the results from Atlanta, we won't stick on Atlanta too long because we still have other tournaments that have happened between then and now. But looking at the top 9, because it was an asymmetrical top 9 cut, we had 4 archetypes in there, or 5 archetypes in there. So we had Gardevoir, Dragapult Dusknoir, Straight Dragapult, Terapagos Bouffalante, and Straight Goldengo. We'll start Hunter. Did any of this surprise you? The breakdown of, if we combine all the Dragapults, it's 5 Dragapults, 2 Guardies, and then 1 Terapagos, 1 Goldengo. Anything surprising here? Anything of note here that you kind of started taking into account when getting ready for your next event?
I thought that Gardevoir was just going to be like a 1% that like, oh, maybe I'll face 1. And being 2 in top 8 and then seeing a lot around me in the top tables, I was a bit surprised where I faced 2 at the whole tournament. I was not expecting that. Though I was expecting a lot of Dragapult, so I'm not surprised that Dragapult is up there. I'm not surprised about the Goldengo. I'm not surprised about the Terabof.
Same question for you, Josh, and anything that you took from it to start preparing for the next events after.
I wasn't surprised by anything. I mean, when you have like one instance of a deck in top 8, like I don't know that necessarily is like a true reflection of how like successful a deck was at a tournament rather than like
Sure.
taking in conversion rate and things like that.
Mhm.
I sort of like value that more. But the tournament being dominated by Dragapult was not surprising. And people love to disrespect Guardy. Like there was basically no reason to believe Guardy was not going to be strong going into this event. So I was not surprised to see Gardevoir perform well. Obviously, I chose to play the deck, so that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
But not surprised by like, Terrabuffin, Straight Goldengo, and Straight Pult were all decks that we knew existed. Straight Pult is more consistent than Pult Noir, so while I think that Pult Noir has a higher ceiling in terms of the things that it can do, Straight Pult is going to do what it wants to do more frequently. So it makes sense that there were more instances like sort of dispersed throughout day 2 and top 8 to me.
So mentioning the conversion there as well. If you look on Limitless Labs now, you can see like the full conversion rates and everything. You can turn variant groupings on and off. But looking at Atlanta in the Masters division, so there was 308 people playing Dragapult Dusknor and 125 playing straight Dragapult. So about a third of the people playing straight Draga compared to Draga Dusk. However, 14% of the players who played Dragapult Dusk made it through to day 2, while 28%, double of the players playing straight Draga, made it into day 2. Jake, before I say anything, I want to see what you have to say about this. Why do you think something like this happened where it had straight Dragapult had twice the conversion rate of Dragapult Dusknor? Is the deck actually that much better when you take out Dusknor, or are there other things here that we're missing?
I think it honestly came down to lists more than the archetype, and like mainly the supporter cards in people's decks. The straight Dragapult deck just plays more supporter cards in general, so people kind of could get away with playing like 4 Arven in their deck because they also had other like supporters to set up. Whereas I think the Dragapult Dusknor lists, most people were playing just terrible lists. Like honestly, for the 4 Arven it's awful in the deck. I think you lose the mirror because you can't set up under item lock. But so I think that's kind of the main reason for it is like the Dragapult, the straight Dragapult deck just naturally you have more consistency cards in general. But the Dragapult Dusknor deck, you have to be very careful about what your supporter lineup is, and it has to be like really, really good in order for you to have the right matchups. And so I think all the Dragapult Dusknor decks were probably just losing mirrors left and right because they couldn't set up against the more consistent Dragapult variant. I think in the end, Dragapult Dusknor, if you play like your low Arven counts, heavy Jock Brock, I think like your matchup against the straight Dragapult deck is not that bad. It can be. And there's other techs you can play as well for that matchup. I know I played the jamming tower, which for Guardy and for these like tools on Badu situations. But I had been like sort of into this format for a while because my friend Noah Yoshida in Japan had been like playing city leagues and the Champions League, and he was playing Gardevoir a lot for many of those tournaments. So I was aware of how strong the deck was. When I saw it do really well at the Champions League, I knew it was like now it's on people's radar for things. So if any good player was like overlooking the fact that it was possibly good, like they definitely know that it's a possible good deck at that point. So I played the Jamming Tower because I think that like really helps against Guardy. It's like at least like 10% boost. The matchup was
10%?
I think the matchup is really bad without Jamming Tower, and it's like not really bad with Jamming Tower. It's not like it doesn't flip it to positive, but it gets like close to even. I think it's really bad without Tower, especially against like the maybe not the Zoroark build, but like the 3 to 4, like the 3 or 4 Bravery Charm builds with the straight Gardevoir. Like that matchup, it like completely like changes it a lot with the one card. And then Jamming Tower also obviously helps against like the Badoo War situations where you can do like cool things with bumping their tools at a time that they don't expect it, and also disabling EXP share on the Dragapult mirror can be really interesting too, because you can just like sit behind, set up your Dusknors, and then go for like an energy board wipe situation where like you're not winning on prizes, but you just knock out all of your opponent's energy from play, and then succeed from there. So that's like kind of why I played the list that I did. I think overall in the format now, there's too much straight Dragapult because it's pretty weak against Gardevoir. I think you really need the Dusknors and the Jamming Tower to succeed in this format. Like the Genesect is great, but I don't think it's worth it. Like overall, like the space that it takes up. And like the rewards you're getting for it, and all the other tech cards like Monkey Dory and the extra supporters and things, it's just not worth it when your Gardevoir matchup is not good enough. And I think like all the top players know how good Gardevoir is now. It's won 3 tournaments. Like you got to be playing a deck that beats Gardevoir. 4 tournaments. You're right. You got to be playing the Dragon
Shout
Ball
out
deck
South
that
Africa.
beats Gardevoir. Yep.
Any rebuttal, Josh or Hunter, on anything that Jake said or any of the reasons he gave on why Dragapult might have had a double conversion rate compared to Dragadusk?
I think.
No,
Sorry, go ahead, Hunter. You go ahead.
I was gonna say I completely agree with everything you said over there, especially with I feel that right now Genesect is a little too just a little weak, and the Jamming Tower definitely helps these matchups. And how the straight Dragapult has to be able to run more supporters, and where the Dusknor version doesn't run much more supporters, so it's less consistent. So less would make.
How about you, Josh?
Yeah. Well, I'll just say
Oh, yeah,
quickly
go
on
ahead,
that
Jake.
point. My point wasn't that Dragapult Dusknor wasn't more consistent, wasn't less consistent because it was playing less supporters. It was just that you have to be playing a perfect supporter count in your Dragapult Dusknor deck for it to succeed, and that supporter count can't include the 4 Arvins that everyone was playing. Whereas the straight Pult deck can play 4 Arvins because they already play other cards as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I think they just naturally played the anti-Badoo cards and were fine against Badoo.
Before we get to Josh, Jake, so do you think that this deck building ideology of like, 4 Arvin bad because bad into Mirror and Guardy, do you think that stands regardless of a player's caliber or what the overall goal is for a player? So like if it's somebody's first tournament and they want a consistent deck against the field, because 4 Arvin is great in any matchup that's not item lock, right? Does it change based on any of that, or do you just think Arvin bad played 2 max?
I mean, I think like you have to analyze your consistency cards more carefully in this format than before. Arvin's not a consistency card in like half your matchups, which is the problem. It's like a power card, a mid-game power card, or consistency when you're going second, but if you go first, not a consistency. So it's like a cards like Brock or Jock or just draw supporters, Research Iono, these types of cards are consistency in all your matchups. But Arvin's like, it's really good consistency in some matchups, pretty bad consistency in others. and overall the card is like it's a lot weaker than previous formats
Right,
because
than it used to be.
Yeah, so I think initially people were just overrating the card, but now I think it's more of an issue of people are not used to like exactly why the card is not as strong as it was before, beyond the fact that there's like less tool cards to search for, and like Arvin was really good because of all the like the draw abilities like refinement and everything, to like supplement your, so you draw with your abilities and then find whatever you need with Arvin, whereas now that's like your supporter has to do the heavy lifting, and Arvin can't really do that in a lot of situations. So I think I wouldn't be playing. The only reason I think like Arvin at all should be in Dragapult is to find like your ace spec really. I mean, there's a couple more reasons, but especially with like the Genesect and the Badoo tool cards are important too. But I wouldn't categorize Arvin as like a blanket consistency card. It's like, yeah, you have to be more careful about it because of how much Badoo there is.
Josh, Dragapult Dusk versus Straight Draga, ideas on why that conversion was so different.
Yeah, the only thing that I'll push back a little bit. I do think straight Pult is naturally more consistent than Pult Noir. Just there's more space, right? Like I agree with Jake that like a more refined supporter count, like Kedrick 60 especially. Like if you're unfavored in the like Pult Noir versus straight Pult mirror playing Andrew's 60, it's like 2%. It's not anything crazy. The matchup is incredibly close. It's functionally a mirror. Where if you're able to sustain your Dusknors, like you're gonna be fine. So I agree that the matchup is much closer. I will say the only difference for me in terms of conversion rate that's not necessarily list specific is I think if you go into straight Pult and look at the list of players that chose to play straight Pult, your average straight Pult player was a lot better than your average Pult Dusknor player outside of the like I mean what there of the top 7 Dragapult Dusknor placements, 5 of them were on the same list. It might be more than that. I don't know if that's like completely the correct ratio, but I think your average very good player playing Dragapult chose to pilot the straight Dragapult, rather than Pult Noir to this tournament. And you know, if you learn anything about tournament results and placements and things like that, what good players choose to play is going to be the most impactful thing on the results of a tournament, always.
Yeah, that was the answer I was looking for, because Dragapult, yeah, straight, it's not that like better player, like the best players only played straight Dragapult. No, like we see Andrew Hedrick play Dragapult Dusknor. A bunch of people with him played his list that are all great players,
Jake,
but Jake played Dragapult Dusknor, but straight Dragapult had a higher concentration of better players, because Dragapult Dusknor, whenever we have like that tier 1 or tier S deck, you know, not only the best players are playing it, the whole field's playing it. But straight Dragapult was kind of something that wasn't being talked about in the mainstream leading up to this event so much. And even if it was, people had already learned how to play Dragapult Dusknor. So we saw straight Dragapult, I think, have a higher concentration of, like Josh said, better players, or better players on average playing the deck.
I wasn't looking at the standings, so I was thinking about that point in the back of my head, but I didn't want to say it because if I was wrong, then
All right, cool. So the last thing I want to talk about for Atlanta is Terabox and Terapagos. So Terabox, you know, got a lot of hype because back in February, Tord and Rahul and some players from Japan played Terabox to Champions League Fukuoka, and Tord got top 16 with it. You know, master classes were made, YouTube videos were made, tweets were tweeted, and Terabox became hyped to be, is this the best deck in format? Let's start with Hunter here on Terabox. Hunter, do you think Terabox is a tier 1 deck? Do you think it just got chased out of the meta for one weekend because of Terapagos Bouffalant? And is it coming back for Milwaukee?
So I believe that Terabox is a very strong deck. The only flaw with the deck is it is very susceptible to Iono and Unfair Stamp. So where it can have an amazing early game, it just falters by the end just because you get Iono to 2, you go Fez, and then you just whiff whatever attacker you need by the end of the game. So I believe the deck is good. It just, if there's a way to fix that, I feel like the deck would be tier 1, but right now I don't think.
Josh, what are your thoughts on Terabox and any of the interactions that Terapagos caused for it?
I think Terabox is not a tier 1 deck, but I think that it is close. I think it is like certainly a top 5 deck in the format. Similar to what Jake was saying about list refinement for Dragapult, I think that the Terabox lists were not quite like where they needed to be as successful. But the deck is like super flexible in terms of what you can build it to be strong against. And especially like we haven't talked about Monterrey yet, but Yurko chose to include the rescue board in the deck, and I think that makes your Dragapult matchup especially like way more consistent. Your Gardevoir matchup is a lot more consistent because you're no longer getting CC Badooed and then you're like, oh well, I have to sob this turn because I physically can't torrential pump again. I think that the rescue board does a lot of like work to help improve that matchup overall. I don't think the deck is as powerful as the tier 1 decks, which are obviously Dragapult and Gardevoir, right? And I don't even think, I would say probably some variant of Goldango is also more powerful inherently than Terabox, but I would probably put Terabox at like number 4 in terms of like the best decks. I don't think that Terapagos Buffalon, I mean, it might have played a role in its like poor performance in Atlanta specifically, but Terapagos Buffalon loses very badly to both Dragapult and Gardevoir, so I don't think it will be that good going forward. That's my opinion. Maybe that's a hot take.
I agree. I mean, I thought Terapagos wasn't even good for Atlanta, just because like Gardevoir was going to be good straight Dragapult and Dragapult, so now there's even more archetype share between Dragapults. Hunter, let's hear what you have to say.
I completely disagree with that. I completely disagree with the Dragapult statement. I kind of agree with the Gardevoir statement. It does not have a good Gardevoir. But
Okay.
I believe that into Dragapult at least, if especially the non-Dusk version, you're able to just go Clefairy, Bravery Charm, and their only response is just going like Ursaluna, which you just have an easy response to Ursaluna by either just like having like just going Clefairy again by just going Rescue Stretcher, Crispin, and then just going Return with that. And like also they just can't consistently like get Ursaluna out of the active if you just go like Iono them, so they're kind of just stuck in the active. While I feel like the Dusknor version, you can just go Clefairy, they go Unfair Stamp you, they kill your Clefairy or whatever, and you just need to either take 1 or 2 prizes just because they probably use Dusknors, and you can just either go Rescue Stretcher for Clefairy or just go like just kill like a Dreepy on the bench if you're at like 1 prize.
Well, I'll say I put like okay, sure. I played like probably like 60 or 70 games with Terapagos Buffalon before the tournament. Like that's the deck I wanted to play because I like slow decks. I like healing my Pokemon that has 1,000,000 HP. But I was not confident in the Dragapult matchup. And I like threw all the techs in. I think a lot of Dragapult Dusknor players are like way too trigger happy with their Dusknors. Which is a big problem in that matchup. You can't blow them up just randomly. But I think like the deck, like I couldn't ever get it to a point where you like Dragapult just has so much, the Dusknor variant in particular has so much control over when they put their 2 prizes in play that Terapagos can't really take advantage of anything like at the right time. If you like pre-bench Clefairy, then like you're at risk of just getting that knocked out. Especially I played the Jamming Tower that helps there too if you have the Bravery Charm and things on it. But there's like Dragapult, like a good Dragapult player, they have so many options to just deal with whatever you have. And I also feel like the Terapagos deck this is a little bit underrated thing, but all the Noctowl decks in general, they really telegraph like their hand strength. So you can get a good read on like what they have or what they can do like pretty easily if you've played those decks like a handful of games. And I felt like I was always just reading the right play to do against them like very consistently. And yeah, I felt like the matchup was like at least like 40-60 at best, I think. And it was like Yeah, the Clefairy is like one-shotting your Dragapult's good, but like they have so much control over your board, like your access to any cards. You can't pre-bench things because they're going to get board wiped. Um, and yeah, it's just really tough. And they have Badoo as well.
Oh,
You have to be very careful about those things. I think I'm cutting out a little bit.
No, you're
Sorry.
good now. You're good now.
You did,
Okay,
but you
fixed.
said itchy pollen and your camera was an item, so it just it had to peace out. Yeah, I agree with you, Hunter. I think in a perfect world, if like if both decks like set up perfectly how they want to, then sure, probably the matchup is not so bad. But every single Noctowl deck is incredibly weak to CC Noctowl, Unfair Stamp, Itchy Pollen. Dragapult just like has so much time to set up their board because you're unlike Terabox. I think Terabox is the one exception to this because it can take multiple prizes in succession very quickly.
Yeah.
Right? Raging Bolt can't do that. Terapagos Boufflant can't do that. So you're not putting that much pressure on them early. So if they buy any space, like literally any space with Badoo Stamp, like there's just like not that much that you can do. Like sure you can go Clefairy, but if they go, pop Dusclops, kill the Clefairy, Iono you to 2, especially if they also like Halucha kill your Hoot Hoots, you're probably still losing that game.
Yeah, you need like board stabilizers like Jake. I think Jake, you tweeted out the Dunsparce idea recently.
Yeah.
That we had
Yeah.
talked about prior to Atlanta. Like, you go Noctowl for Jacques and set up double the Dunsparce and then take the kill, and then you get unfair stamped and then they destroy all of your Hoot Hoots. But like they can't possibly kill your Clefairy, your Fez, 2 the Dunsparces, and a Hoot Hoot all at the same time. So like, but then like you're also putting like a 3-2 line of the Dunsparce in your deck plus Jock to maybe have a 50-50 versus Dragapult. So
Let's go.
that doesn't feel great. And then not even that, but like I feel like the deck has a problem versus Dragapult and Guardy, which are both at the top, but are both beating you for different reasons. So like having the Dunsparce for board stabilizing doesn't help against Guardy because they're not beating you with like unfair stamp item locker, like unfair stamp destroy your board. They're beating you with a combination of single prizers and a Gardevoir that you can't kill and like 2 or 3 monkeys. Which is why I considered Farigiraf or Umbreon in the deck, I will say.
Umbreon.
Umbreon.
Sorry, that's Flareon Overflow. I've been testing Flareon a lot too, which I also considered Farigiraf on. Yeah, we'll get the Flareon. Sorry, thanks for calling that out.
I would like to say one more thing though, I ran the Mew not just for going the genome hacking into Dragapult to take 3 prizes against like the Dusknor build. I used it mainly as Nest Ball Fez, Nest Ball Mew. If I get unfair stamped, okay, fine, restart. As I'm chilling.
How are you playing your Nest Balls? You can't play them. I'm item locking you.
Well.
Wait, did you play Brock or no?
I'll get turn 1.
Did you play Brock?
I felt like all of the if Noctowl like had some better way to like reset them, then the deck would be good. But the problem is like in order to set up your board to be resilient, you have to spend all of your Noctowls, and then like your board is not resilient anyway. You can draw 6 cards and then you have no Noctowl. So
right, yeah, you got Noctowl for like Brock scouting and then and Aries.
It's so hard to get like positive value on early Noctowls, like setting up your board to prepare against unfair stamp. And like I also tested Genesect too, but that costs a full Noctowl surge, so it's like it's just not worth it at that point. It's like canceling it out.
Yeah. It's okay. Everyone's got their deck that they're a little delusional about. Mine is Guardy. Yours can be Terapagos Boufflant. We're all allowed one. We're all allowed one.
Exactly.
So let's move on to let's move on to Monterrey. So Monterrey was 1 week after Atlanta, and we saw 0 Dragapult Dusknors in the top 9 asymmetrical. So, I instantly started getting questions about this, like, is Dragapult Dusknor dead? Do we all have to switch to straight Dragapult? Like, everyone here in this video has been playing the game for many years. We probably have 4 decades or more of time between all of us here. We know that one tournament result does not define a deck, or does not a meta define.
It's dead.
So Hunter, let's start with you. So Monterrey top 9 ASIM was 2 Goldengos, 2 Dragapults without Dusknor, a Raging Bolt, a Blissey, a Gardevoir, a Joltik. So what do you make of the lack of Dragapult Dusknor? Is it a similar thing where the better players decided to play straight Dragapult on average? Did Dragapult Dusknor just fall off for some reason? Did you have any thoughts on this?
So currently, I have the whatever top 32 pulled up right now.
Mm-hmm.
Where looking at the top 32, majority of the people who play Dragapult were either just running straight Dragapult or they're like running the Goldango Dragapult. Which I believe, like I was testing the deck before Atlanta, and I believe that deck was very strong going into Atlanta. And I see a lot of the top players, if they were going to play Dragapult, they're going to choose the Goldango Dragapult, which I feel is what detracted from people playing the Duck.
Well, I would consider Goldango Dragapult to just be like a Goldango deck. Although
I mean, it's
At least that version of the deck is definitely a Goldango deck.
yeah, the one
Like,
that
Grant
they
Shen,
played to
Caleb Rogerson
Monterrey.
list, it's like the only list I've seen with like the triple Cypher Maniac. It's definitely like it's definitely a Goldango deck more than a Dragapult deck.
Yeah,
like,
especially
much
since
like
they're not playing
90-10.
Crispin. Like they're not really planning to attack with Goldango. I meant with Dragapult.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, Ross Cawthon also ran the Crispin.
True.
That's true.
So yeah, did you think that straight Dragapult was just better than Dragapult Dusk, or Hunter?
I would say probably going to the tournament, yes, it was, as I felt like it was more consistent build into just going into the.
Josh, how about you?
No, not necessarily. I think this one more than Atlanta, I would say that the best players just didn't choose to bring Dragapult Dusknor. Largely, I think the perception going into Monterrey was that many people were just gonna like play Henry's Guardy 60, and it's pretty hard. I would say even like if you are a better Dragapult Dusknor player than the Gardevoir Zoroark player, I would still maybe favor the Guardy Zoroark player. That's how bad I think the matchup is. And so a lot of people didn't want to take that loss, and so chose to pilot other decks. And then some of the better players that showed up to the tournament that are Dragapult players, like Tanner, just had top aided with straight Pult. So he was never going to switch to Dragapult Dusknor. So then you have like probably the best players playing Dragapult Dusknor were like Aiden Koos, who got the highest placement with Dragapult Dusknor. I stand by the fact that I think that Pult Noir has a higher cap than the other decks, but people wanted to beat so the reason why Jishen and that group played that version of Dango Pult was because they thought it had a favored matchup into Dragapult, which it does, because Goldango is like probably slightly favored into Dragapult and Dragapult Dusknor, and then they were under the impression that their list beat Gardevoir. Obviously, the list does beat Gardevoir Zoroark, but Brent did not play Gardevoir Zoroark, so it didn't end up mattering as much.
Jake, any other thoughts to add on to that?
I think I mostly agree. It was like almost entirely this can come down to just player skill, like player difference, like what the top players chose to bring. Yeah, I think out of like a tournament this size too, it's like there was a really high concentration of good players. It's like what they choose to bring to the tournament is going to have like a huge influence over the metagame and the result of the tournament. And most good players just decided not to bring Dragapult Dusknor to this tournament specifically, which I think was like, a fine reaction to Atlanta the previous weekend, but doesn't necessarily say anything about the format as it continues on. Because it's very different than the format going into Milwaukee is going to look different than how this Monterrey regional turned out, and same as Atlanta, it looked different than all of those.
Absolutely. So let's get into talking about what exactly this Milwaukee tournament will look like. So we're talking about for the Masters division and day one. Jake, what do you think the 6 archetypes that will be on the TPCI most played day one graphic, the top 6 most played decks.
Yeah, I think it'll be like Dragapult, Dragapult, Gardevoir, and then I'm not sure the order. Like Dragapult, Gardevoir, Golden Go will be the top 3.
I feel like Dragapult
And
just
then
gets like a default to number 1 maybe because it's all the
yeah,
versions that go into
yeah,
1 on that graphic.
yeah. They had the number is going to be very high, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But I think the other decks, like I think Raging Bolt will probably be there, even though it doesn't deserve to be there. But I mean the deck's like fine, but I don't think it's like a yeah. I mean there aren't honestly that many decks in this format like to choose from like for the bottom ones. I mean okay there's a lot of decks, but it's like there's not a lot of the rankings between all the lower place decks are not very obvious. You can kind of just pick them all at like
Right.
equally good. Like Terabox, Raging Bolt, the new Joltic Iron Hands deck, which is terrible. That I mean it's good, but I hate that it's good. Then the Zoroark deck, Arcaludon, like Flareon, Terabagos, all these things. Yeah, like it's very hard to determine which ones are actually going to be on the meta graphic. But I
Right.
think it like beyond the top 3, it doesn't actually matter the order because the order that shows up day 1 is going to be different than day 2, like very most likely. So yeah, I'd care about Dragapult, Gardevoir, and Golden Go. And then I think Zoroark is really, really well placed for the tournament. I think the deck has like been pretty underrated going up into leading up into this past weekend. There's obviously flaws with the deck, but like you have a good Goldango matchup and Gardevoir matchup, from what I understand.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and then the Dragapult matchup is against the straight Pult matchup. I think it's like close to even favored, maybe. But the Dusknor matchup, I think, is like it's close, maybe a little bit unfavored. But yeah, I think Zoroark is really. I don't know if it'll make the graphic, but it probably deserves to.
Hunter, top most played decks. Any disagreements, any changes, any agreements?
So I was gonna say Dragapult, Gardevoir, Goldango, probably Raging Bolt. I could see Joltik squeezing in at like 6th. I could see Archaludon being on there. I could also see Terabox being like in the 5 to 6 range. Like one of the 3 decks. Just choose whatever you.
And
I
then
don't think Terabagos will be on there at all. I just kind of fell off.
yeah. How about you, Josh?
Yeah, I think I agree. I'm pretty firmly in the camp of like I like to have an order for the 6. My opinion right now is that Pult will be 1, Dango will be 2, Guardy will be 3, because I think Dango, whether or not it's true, I think Dango is perceived as being a more accessible deck to pilot than Gardevoir is.
Yeah.
And I think the perception is also that the strength is like relatively similar. And Goldango, in theory, right, can be built to be favored into both Pult and Gardevoir. And so if you're looking for a deck that beats those two things, Goldango is probably the most like obvious first place to look. Which is why I also think 4th will be Terabox, because I think you can also relatively easily justify this idea that Terabox beats both of them. I don't know that it's true necessarily. Some of the lab statistics point to it being like slightly favored against Pult and slightly unfavored against Guardy. How much we give stock to those statistics is another question. And then I think 5 will be Joltic Box. I do think a lot of Raging Bolt players will choose to switch to Joltic Box because it is significantly easier to play than Raging Bolt is now. Raging Bolt has become a much more difficult deck to pilot, but
Mhm.
people just like decided it was still really easy because it was easy last format.
Right.
But Joltic Box is actually really easy to play.
Mhm.
So I think a lot of people are going to jump ship to that. And then 6, this is where it kind of like splurges. Like maybe it'll be Raging Bolt. I would also not be surprised to see Poison Arch at 6. And I disagree that Zoroark is a good play for this event. You do beat Guardy, you crush Guardy, and you can take this as a grain of salt because I am a Guardy player for sure. But you lose to every other deck, like all of them except for the top 3.
Okay, yeah,
Jake
except for the
disagrees,
top
but
3.
that's fine.
I think Zork's like Zork's unfavored into like the Noctowl decks, but it's like pretty good into anything that doesn't have Noctowl, and then not because of Noctowl, but just because of the stuff in the deck. Like
What else
Pikachu's annoying to deal
exists?
with, and then
No, you lose to
Raging
Joltik for
Bolt.
sure too, right? You like
Joltik-
get farmed by
Yeah,
Joltik.
yeah, Joltik too. That's probably not great.
Your
I mean,
Arch
actually,
Poison
that one's-
matchup also probably is not
Is-
that good, right?
Is the Joltik matchup actually bad though? I haven't tested it all, but
Iron Leaves.
oh yeah, the stupid
Oh,
leaves.
Iron
It's
Okay,
like
yeah, I
pretty
forgot
bad.
about that, yeah.
It's
Why are people
Galvantula.
playing Iron Leaves?
and
It's like pretty bad. Yeah, Galvantula too, dude. No,
Yeah.
you literally
And
like you're like
Galvantula's
yeah,
kinda fake.
you lose to the Noctowl. No, it's not. Galvantula's so broken. I just did a masterclass of this. Galvantula's insanely good.
This.
I don't know. I mean, what
You, like,
in
you
the
need
Zork,
it.
in the Zork matchup specifically, you just like kill the you use the snipe attack to just kill double Joltik or something if they try to put it in play. But against other decks, the Galvantula is relevant. I think that the leaves is a problem though for Zoroark.
Yeah. So like you lose to like 4 through 8 because I think Arch Poison is also probably not a very good matchup. Maybe I'm
I
wrong.
think-
that
I
one
think
I
that
don't
one's
have a lot of
fine.
experience, but sorry, I'm
I'd
a Zoroark
assume that
hater.
one's fine because you can just like if they ever hit into you, they just die back, and then you can snipe all their little guys.
But they should kill you, right? You have 280, so they just kill
Yeah,
you.
well,
So
Peril,
they only die back to Dark
they
No,
have
wait,
to
I
take
don't-
the full combo Fang.
they don't
Isn't
kill
that what
you
they're
though,
built-
right?
listen,
'Cause the
I
Peril's
think Arch
jungle doesn't
Poison-
work.
Arch Poison is the worst deck in the format, but I do think the deck is built to hit the combo. And if you can't kill the Archaludon back, then they already have the combo, right?
Yeah, the I think Celia was just about to say it, but the stadium doesn't work on Zoroark, so they can't actually hit
Right.
280. I was just doing
They-
the math in
yeah.
the head.
Perilous Jungle says
Oh,
yeah.
non-dark Pokemon.
So,
So
if I read the
that
card,
that
then I would
matchup
understand.
that matchup is pretty
Oh,
close,
okay.
I think.
Okay,
I
that makes way more sense.
also saw, I think it was Fabian, he was playing the Hoopa EX, which I also assume would be pretty good into
Oh, yeah.
Celtic deck.
The Iron Hands deck, yeah.
Mhm.
What is
Yeah.
Hoopa? Yeah,
That's
It's the
sort of probably
Terrastal.
the answer.
It takes dark energy, but it's fighting type.
It's
You should know this. It's a
Pretty dark.
Lost Box card.
It was on stream.
when
Fob-
Lost Box was
Fabian
good, I
playing
only
it.
played
Yeah.
Gardevoir.
Well, I know, but you gotta beat it.
Okay, so we've gone over the decks that we think are going to be popular. Now, to succeed at a tournament, how much does knowing, like, predicting the meta share correctly actually matter, Jake?
I think it matters a lot less than people think. Predicting the general meta is what I mean. Is matters a lot less than people think. I think predicting what it kind of depends on like how good you are as a player, like who you think what you think you're aiming for your placement is going to determine like what meta you care about. Because if you're aiming for like your first day 2 or something, then you probably do care a lot about the general metagame. But if you're aiming for a top 8, then you can almost ignore the day 1 metagame and like just focus on the day 2 metagame, because the day 2 metagame means it's all the players that you're going to hit on the way to day 2, because those are they will make up day 2. So you only care about the day 2 metagame. And then also if you're like aiming for top 8 or something, you probably only care about what the highest, like the top players are on. So yeah, it really depends on what you think your realistically, like your range of realistic placements for the tournament, or what you want to care about for the tournament, is what type of meta you should be caring about. And I think if you're aiming for like your first day 2 or something, then yeah, just pick something that's solid against most of that. Pick something you're comfortable with, really, is the main thing. But yeah, if you're a top player, like I don't put too much stake into, especially because like the tournaments this year have less rounds. They're like 12 round tournaments as well. So you're going to hit, you're less likely to hit like the natural spread of the metagame.
Yeah.
You're more likely to deviate from that. So it matters even less than before. I just care about, like going into this tournament, I'm just trying to figure out what the top players are going to play and figure out something that is solid against them. And then if I get knocked out by hitting like 4 Joltic Box in the first 5 rounds, then whatever.
So let's talk about some decks more specifically now. So, and you mentioned it, Joltic Box. I'll start with you, Jake. Is Joltic Box a real deck? because it doesn't draw cards and it puts everything it has on the board kind of like preemptively. So like it has all the makings of like a deck that's a trap to play. What do you think?
I mean, I think most decks in this format don't really draw any cards, especially when you're getting item locked.
True.
And the Joltik deck's like somewhat resilient to Badoo, like pretty good against the Badoo decks generally. It's not good against Dragapult Dusknor, which is another reason why I think Dragapult Dusknor is like should be on the rise again if this deck is coming up. Yeah, that matchup's pretty tricky for them, as long as the Dragapult player like sets up. But like Iron Hands is, and the whole like Joltik into Iron Hands strategy is so consistent that like yeah, most of your wins against even like a lot of the top decks are just going to come from you setting up every game and they miss 1 out of the 3 games and you're going to get a free win there. So I do think this deck is real, as much as I hate it. They should ban Iron Hands, but
Again.
yeah. But it's the deck that I think like if you're really new to the game and you just want to have fun at the tournament and you don't care about playing gameplay that is interesting and you just want to win games, that's the deck to play.
Okay, now over to Josh. So, Josh, you just ran a master class on this deck. So obviously, if you don't play it to the next tournament you go to, you're meta manipulating. Um, so
On Tyler, dude, not on me. I just did it because he didn't want to make a class by himself.
So yeah, so I was gonna say you ran it with Tyler, and so Tyler top 8'd with Joltic Box. So you know it's a small. It was a small and foreign event compared to what Milwaukee will be, but kind of thinking like, okay, well if Tyler can take Joltic Box and he's a good player and he's taking it up to top 8, so is this a deck that other players with top 8 aspirations should be looking to, or do you think he got a really lucky run to get there with the deck, or do you think he smoothed things out by being a good player and playing into his variants kind of thing? Where do you think this deck falls, and do you think it can get more top 8s?
I think whether or not this is your best choice to get top 8 is something that you have to be really honest with yourself about how good you are at Pokemon. If you are a mid to low end player, Joltic Box is probably your best shot at getting top 8. Because it is so simple. Your lines are incredibly straightforward. And like, when we built the list, when Tyler Nunez and I were working on the list, we added a couple of things that made the lines a little less straightforward, particularly like the Maractus opens up a ton more variations in your lines that you can use to sort of like fix some of your problems. But you can build the deck to just like go fast and 2-2-2. So I think if you're like on the mid to low end of players in terms of skill or very under practiced in the format, it's probably your best bet to top 8 the event. If you are good at the game, like very good, and have had time to practice, you probably shouldn't play it, like especially over like Guardy, Dango, Dragapult, right? Like if you're good and you know how to play one of those decks, you probably should play one of those decks. But I think Joltic Box is really strong, and I don't think people are respecting it. It's basically the exact same thing that Miraidon was in every other format, where like people are like, only terrible Pokemon players play that deck, so I'm just not going to respect it, and then they get farmed. And I think that's kind of where we're at right now, is people are like, this deck sucks, it's not real. Yes, Tyler is obviously an excellent player. Like, I'll glaze him. He's one of my best friends. He's an excellent player. He had a sick run. But yeah, I don't think it is the best deck to win this tournament, because I agree with Jake. I think largely part of Dragapult Dusknor's fall off in Monterrey was due to a general like uptick in speed for the format. That can punish like some of the slower builds of Dragapult, especially like as lists got refined for Terabox and Joltik. But as these decks like sort of increase in play, Dragapult Dusknor is a lot more resilient. Like Jake said, I think Pult Noir is like one of Joltic Box's like harder matchups to win. it's like super easy to navigate, but if Pult Noir just like hits their pieces, they win the matchup basically, and it's completely out of your control. Every game with Joltic Box actually is pretty much out of your control. It is go aggressive. Does my opponent hit? If yes, lose. Or try and Maractus and hope that they messed up and didn't like prepare for it. And if no, then you win because you amp 3 times or amp twice and then Ursaluna or Clefairy or whatever, right?
I think
cool.
also like
Go ahead,
sorry.
Jake.
Yeah, I think also like it can't be understated how like how much of an advantage you are if you're like a good player and you play like a deck that nobody cares about. Yeah, like especially with this Maractus, like Tyler, I'm sure he won so many games because opponents just didn't know like you if you haven't practiced against the Joltic Box deck, like you might not like even be aware of like everything that it, like the speed, what you have to care about to set up and things. Like the matchup is like everything is very flowcharty with that deck and against that deck. But if you've never made the flowchart, I think a lot of people, a lot of even good players are pretty bad at like flowcharting on the fly with a completely new archetype. And so I think now that the deck exists, now that people have their 10 minutes to spend flowcharting the deck and flowcharting against the deck, that it's like it's not the best play for it if you're like a top player, but especially now that the Maractus is out. But yeah, as a lower end player, very good deck.
Hunter, talk to me about Flareon, the Flareon Sylveon deck, and why or why not this is a good play, what its good matchups are.
So I believe that Flareon as a deck is very well placed. Besides the fact that it has a very mediocre Gardevoir matchup, if you're willing to take the mediocre Gardevoir matchup, I think it's a really good play. So since you're taking a mediocre matchup as Gardevoir, it's just I don't know if it's the correct call or the tournament win.
And I also think it has a bad matchup to Joltic Box. Because of the Pikachu.
Yes, I would say so too. I would say so.
Jake, do you have any thoughts on Flareon?
Yeah, I think I think in general, I think the deck is underexplored still. Like I think there's a lot of cool things you can do with it. But especially there's this like Espeon EX card, or that I've wanted to put it. I saw like a City League list with it a couple weeks ago or something. But yeah, you just devolve everything. It's just TM Devo, but you can do it repeatedly. And I think that has like some merit in the format. Oh, and it shuffles the cards into the deck too, which is cool. So you can like infinitely devolve against all these Dragapult decks that are cutting candies, which is pretty interesting. So there's a lot of things you can explore with the deck still. I think there's some inherent flaws with it against like Gardevoir is like pretty tough. Any Pikachu EX deck is like it's hard to tech for. Like there are things you can play to be fine against Pikachu, but they take a lot of deck space. Like the tool cards, like Vengeful Punch, Rocky Helmet, or like Howlucha even.
Or Volcanion.
There's Volcanion. There's
Volcanion
options.
Doesn't work, I don't think, because you can't Briar with Volk, right?
You cannot Briar.
Yeah, you can't Briar. If you want to Briar, it doesn't work. Yeah.
Which is like your consistent strat, right? Like you win by going kill Joltik, kill hands, CC Briar, finish the game. So Volk doesn't fix that.
Yeah. I think Flareon, like if you're expecting a lot of like top players to be playing Golden Go, then it's definitely a deck to look at because that matchup's pretty good. And you can tech it like to beat you can make it beat Dragapult, like, or be like pretty good against the straight pull, especially the Dusknor pull is a bit more tricky, but the straight pull is definitely like Angelite is pretty broken against them. This Espeon is also pretty broken against them.
Something I just want to point out is that while we're talking about decks, we're often saying like, well, you could take advantage of straight Dragapult in this way, but Dragapult Dusknor is a little, I don't know, that's coming up over and over. And that's just like talking to the point that I know specifically Josh mentioned, but I'm sure we're all thinking that Dragapult Dusknor has that higher power level because it literally can do more than the straight Dragapult ever can. But the straight Dragapult, of course, has other tech tools that Dragapult Dusknor can't utilize. But Dragapult Dusknor can always hit that higher level of 1 turn of damage output kind of thing. the next deck I wanted to look at real quick is Golden Go. So I know we've talked about Golden Go in passing quite a bit here, but how are we think it's looking going into Milwaukee? And is Golden Go Dragapult confirmed to be the best Golden Go version? We'll go Josh next.
I don't necessarily like. I think Goldango is like one of the better plays. Like I said earlier, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like if you're at the higher end of like players, Goldango feels like the obvious counter to both Pult and Guardy. Um, Obviously you have to play Jamming Tower to like actually consistently beat Guardy.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think you're taking like that good of a matchup into either. You're like slightly favored. And then some of your field matchups are like a little uncomfortable. Like, Flareon's basically an auto loss. You take a little bit of a rougher matchup into things like Raging Bolt. Terabox is like weird. You can kind of force Terabox to Pika 3 times, and they can't do that very often. But something like Joltic Box can do it a lot more consistently, right? Um, and so I think if you are good at the game, I think that Goldango is like one of the better plays for this weekend, but you're really kind of banking on hitting some of the higher echelon of decks, or being better than your opponent playing a matchup that's a little sketchier. Because I do think in general, like, you're going to play against worse players on average if you hit Raging Bolt, if you hit Joltic Box. Flareon, it doesn't really matter. As long as they know what Briar does, like, they're gonna beat you. But other than that, I think, Goldango seems well positioned. I don't know that Pult, like Pango as they called it, I don't know that that's the best variant. If I was playing Dango this weekend, it would probably be straight Goldango, which is maybe a little bit of a hot take, but something like close-ish to what Bodhi played in Atlanta. But they all have merit, right? Dango Pult has a more like intrinsically built-in answer to Cornerstone, even if it's not like that consistent at doing so. But it also like it's a nice middle ground between straight and a Dunsparce, because against Dragapult Dusknor specifically, you still have like extra draw Pokemon for the turn that they Iono you to 1 or 2, which is really helpful in that matchup. But something like straight Goldango has more space for things like extra gears. It has more space for extra energy, something like Iron Bundle that can punish like weaker boards against pulled at the end of the game. And having that sort of like space for flexibility is something that I value a lot into a more open field.
Okay, we'll go to Hunter now. Hunter, what are the top 5 decks do you think are the most likely to make it into top cut and or win the event in Masters Division for Milwaukee?
All right, I'll start off Gardevoir. Gardevoir's going to be number 1. I think Gardevoir has the best chance of winning this tournament. It's very well positioned. It just won the last 4 tournaments, and I think that even though it's going to have a bigger target on its back than any other regional this year, I believe that it's still the strongest deck going into. I also think that Dragapult, obviously, both versions. I think Goldango also very solid play, and then I think Raging Bolt's a little slept on right now. I feel like Raging Bolt is a very good play, and I feel like a lot of people are disrespecting it. Where the only thing is where it has pretty good matchups overall, besides the fact that your Gardevoir matchup is like less than like it's not great.
Mm-mm.
I also think that Terabox also has a chance of winning this tournament. I think the deck is, even though I was saying earlier, I feel like it's very susceptible to Iono and stuff. I think the deck is very powerful enough where it can just pull through, maybe even away.
Josh, what do you think is the most surprising deck we'll see in top cut?
Most surprising?
Are we going to see Blissey again? Is Roaring Moon to Dunsparce
Absolutely
going to
not.
make it past 10th place?
I guess maybe my hot take is that I don't think there will be any surprising decks in top 8.
Okay, there you go.
I agree that maybe Raging Bull. I agree that Raging Bull is a little underrated right now. I don't agree that Guardy is the reason why it's bad. Especially the Zoroark version of Guardy is actually probably unfavored into Raging Bolt. but your Dragapult Dusknor matchup is abysmal. So if we assume that people are going to look at results and be like, oh, Pult Noir probably is not it, let's back off of Pult. I don't know that good players will do that, but if we assume that that's what's going to happen, I think that Raging Bolt can dodge enough Pult Noir and then maybe sack maybe sack one or two by getting the turn one like Baby Bolt in the active attached to it. So that I don't know. I don't think any surprising decks will make top 8, but Raging Bolt is probably the one that would be like the most likely.
Yeah, I
would like-
kind of like Raging Bolt too. Go ahead, Hunter.
I was gonna say that I believe that most people that are gonna play Gardevoir are gonna be leaning more towards the Brent version
I do
than the
too.
Zoroark version. So I feel like having that be the most popular version, you're gonna obviously have a worse matchup. So that's the reason why I said that Gardevoir is not a great.
It's definitely worse, but the issue still like persists with the matchup that like you can just get 4 energy on a Baby Bolt and not have any other 2 prizers that aren't Terra Pokemon in play, and you can just like go even on prizes at 4 to 4 and then go Prime Catcher take 2, right? On the same turn that you put energy on 2 Big Bolts so that they can't do anything, right?
I think
so
a huge problem with Raging
Bolt is
go ahead.
Go ahead.
I think a huge problem with Raging Bolt is like the average player level that plays it, kind of like we were talking about, that definitely skews between archetypes. And you know, like you're saying right now, like a line about Baby Bolt, like nobody knows how to use Baby Bolt, really. Like 95% of the people who are
Crazy,
picking
dude.
up the deck are just ultra balling it away or something.
That card is actually it is the only reason the deck is good.
I've
like,
literally said that verbatim.
One.
I've said that like the only reason I would consider pulling up to a tournament with Raging Bolt is Baby Bolt, and also like the fact that we've got Noctowl Engine in there too helps a ton. But like Baby Bolt makes your deck not just a linear big basic like, you know, deck. Like you have other single prizers, sure, but they don't do what Baby Bolt does. Slitherwing is great, but they don't do what Baby Bolt does. So like, yeah.
It also Raging Bolt not to like go back to it, but if we assume that like Joltic Box especially is going to see like a pretty massive increase in play, if you play well, you're taking a favored matchup into Guardy, which is by far the best deck performance-wise in all of the last 4 tournaments. It's won all of them, right?
Yep.
You also are very favored into Joltic Box.
With Raging Bolt, you're saying, yeah.
Yeah, Raging Bolt is well positioned into the like up-and-comer deck in terms of play rate, as well as
for Prime Catcher Sada or Prime Catcher Crispin or whatever, and either bring up their Pikachu Slitherwing it or bring up their Iron Hand. It's you're trading 2 for 1.
You have to kill, so like the way that you play it as Bolt is you go Prime Kill Dawn, and then they have to Pika in response, and then force you to Slither. But like, because you can kill Pika with Slither, with a 1 prizer, it's like so hard for them to do anything. They basically have to go like Galvantula kill Slither, and it's like pretty terrible to be honest. So I do think Bolt is like somewhat well positioned in terms of like the higher end, right? The Joltic Box, the Goldango, the Guardy, but your Pult Noir matchup is like dude, it is so bad. It's so bad.
Yeah, the Raging Bolt versus Pult Noir is always like, oh, I'm winning, I'm losing.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jake.
I think the matchup is like, I don't think it's actually that bad. It's unfavored, but I think the like Baby Bolt can be an issue, especially with a lot of these. A lot of the Pult lists are like cutting Crispins and EXP shares and things, and those are really really important in that matchup. Also, like I haven't tested it, but I think Genesect is like probably really good in Raging Bolt.
So good. Wait, I was this close to playing it to Monterrey with the Genesect. But then Diego Casiraga beat me in cut Eva Cup with Dragapult, and I was like, it's not good enough.
Yeah, so the Genesect, like, it can help you with the like early unfair stamp Badoo stuff, which is like, a big hurdle for the deck to get over. I think Raging Bolt, like, it's a really weird deck in that I feel like it's like got like a skill curve that's like very shallow. Like you can get like good win rate from like very low skill, and then immediately like to get anywhere more, you have to be like a really really good player.
Yeah, to go over average with the deck, you have.
Yeah. it takes so much to like get the full extent of the deck. You have to memorize, like you have to learn all these lines with Baby Bolt basically,
Mhm.
and all your one prize options. It's very very complex deck to play correctly. I think even like it's like people always think Terabox is like the harder deck to play, but I think like at the top level, it's like probably Raging Bolt is trickier because you can't make like a line mistake with that deck. Like Terabox, you can kind of just like throw water upon it, whatever you see, and it's probably like gonna work out, or Pikachu or whatever.
Right. The difficult things with Terabox are more obvious that they're difficult, whereas Raging Bolt
Yeah,
is like sneakily difficult.
yeah. Raging Bolt's like, oh, I got my Sada, I attached my energies. Oh, I've put together my attack, but I'm using the wrong attacker, and I have no idea that I'm using the wrong attacker. Um,
The depth
yeah,
is way higher because now you can more consistently create one prize board states that are like, or like pseudo one prize board states where you just have one prizer and then or the 1/2 prizer, they kill the 2 prizer. Against Goldango, this is a really big thing, right? You put the first Ogre Pawn down, you set up the Baby Bolt and take 1, and they kill Ogre Pawn potentially, right? But you have a 1 prize board, you go to 4, it's 4-4, but then they have to kill a 1 prizer that turn.
Mhm.
And so then you can create, especially against Guardy, against Goldango, the 1 prize board states that you can create with Baby Bolt are incredibly strong. And it's especially against something like Guardy that doesn't play boss, right? It is so easy to create these like checkmate-ish scenarios as long as you can find back-to-back Gust. You just have to like not slam your head on the table and just put a bunch of 2 prizers down and like squawk for no reason and like bench a bunch of baby like big bolts and like just like you're like I can draw so many cards. Just like don't do
Right.
that and you'll be like okay.
So, we're gonna close this out with the round table here. I'm gonna ask each of you a question of what are some techs that you think that could pop up this weekend? Obviously, you don't feel obligated to share your hot tech, that the one card in the card pool nobody else has noticed but you don't feel obligated to share that.
Hey,
But if you think Jamming Tower is good this week, if you think Genesec's bad this week, if you think a skateboard to have a Noctel out to retreat under item lock, whatever the techs are that you think are, yeah, I think these are good, or don't play those, that's a trap. And then also, do you have any tips for players, kind of prep tips or preparation advice that you've used going into tournaments where you then later found success? Let's start. We'll go Jake, then Josh, then Hunter.
yeah. I think like jamming tower, obviously pretty good
Mhm.
against Guardy. I think that's the main one. I think everybody's like uh, all in on these Badoo wars at this point, and like all the Dragapult decks. Like there's all the different techs are kind of out. The one I haven't seen, which I think should see more play, is Lucky Helmet. I think that card's pretty underrated right now.
Lucky or
Um,
Rocky?
no
Lucky
lucky.
Okay.
Helmet.
So you
Yeah,
draw when they itchy paw in your Badoo.
yeah. So Ichipon is like doesn't really do anything to you, and then your Arven is not a useless card. That's the main reason why it's like okay, if you're playing an Arven deck, then it fixes your Arvens. But aside from that, I don't know. That one's just like generic consistency that could be good, but I don't think there's any like any crazy techs that I can think of off the top of my head that would be good this weekend. But yeah, I think like the underrated deck I think right now is still Zorark, and I'd like put more time into Zorark, and yeah, I think it should be like a top 5 at least deck, and we'll see if it gets there this weekend.
And then, do you have any tips for preparation, things that you've done before tournaments that have helped you find success?
Yeah, I think like most of the tournaments I do well at is really just because I've actually practiced for them rather than just showing up. So yeah, I play a lot of games. That's like kind of the best thing I can think of. Um, yeah, really like at this point the meta is like pretty developed. Like you can't go wrong by picking like one of the top 3-5 decks. So just you should have picked one by now if you're not like really experienced in switching decks the night before. Like Josh obviously is, but aside from that, just play a lot of games. I think that's the only one I can think of.
One other question I wanted to add before we go over to Josh that I wanted everybody to answer. if you're somebody going to this tournament, maybe you've made a day 2 before, maybe you haven't, but your goal is just, I want to, I want to feel comfortable. I want a day 2. Um, can you just go net deck a top performing list from Seville or Monterrey or Atlanta and feel okay? Or do you need to like change 5 cards and like work and like tech it out?
I think at this point you probably don't need to go don't need to go as far as changing 5 cards, maybe 1 or 2, but like net decking a list at this point is probably good enough. Like for the vast majority of players, given the state of the format so far, like it's pretty well developed. Just net decking a top list is probably the best course of action. Um, Obviously, there's a chance that you can make an improvement, but the chances as the format goes on are slimmer and slimmer that you'll be the one to find like a card that should be in the deck that isn't already. Um, so yeah, I just probably pick a top deck. Yeah.
Cool. Josh, do you remember the questions? It's been a while. Okay.
Yeah. So in terms of techs, I have 2 primary ones. The first one is Boss's Orders in Guardy. Uh,
Yeah.
both versions of the deck. As I mentioned before at the Raging Bolt thing, for so long, I think there was this general sentiment that like if you're not Henry Chow, you can't play Guardy. And then 3 other people not named Henry Chow won events with Guardy. And so now people are finally moving away from that like sentiment.
Yeah.
Um, and the very obvious weakness with Guardy to me as a Guardy player is that you can only gust with counter catcher. And that is like a pretty exploitable weaknesses in a lot of these decks that have the means to go for like 1 prize attackers into you.
Mhm.
To like even the prize map, especially like something like Goldango can like shove baby Dango to go from the 5 to 4 and then create like uncomfortable positions for you where you need a lot of energy with Screamtail. Um, Boss is better in the Zoroark version of the deck because it's easier to find.
Yeah.
But you can like slot it into the Turo slot in Brent's list also like pretty reasonably. Turo's not that good in Brent's list. That's a self-admission from Brent as well that it's like barely makes the cut anyways. Um, so I think Boss is like a really, really big one to shore up some weaknesses, and it can come in super, super clutch in a ton of different matchups, having the supporter gust that's, not conditional.
And I
Um,
think that's a great example of taking a recently successful list, getting comfortable with it, and like, okay, I'll change 1 card a couple days before
yep.
the tournament. Like that's perfectly fine because I always spew the advice of get comfortable with a deck. If you're trying to make day 2, just keep grinding with it. You're not going to hit only your bad matchup. You might hit none of them. Maybe you'll hit 9 of them, but that would be very unlikely. So like anything can happen, but stick with the deck. But like, yeah, change like 1 or 2 supporters if you have good logic behind it, like Josh is saying about the boss's orders. That's a great example.
Yeah. And then the other tech that I think is really, really interesting is for I think you can play it in both Joltic Box and Terabox,
Hmm.
but it's the Volcanion.
Hmm.
Um, one of the biggest issues with both of those decks right now is that they don't have a consistent way to one-shot Gardevoir. There are easier ways to do that. Joltic Box especially can play like Vitband, which
Hmm.
is decent. Like it's like fine enough, but it only really does that one thing. Volcanion is a lot more flexible because it gives you advantage states in the mirror for
Hmm.
each of those, right? Because both decks struggle to hit through opposing Pikas. So
Right.
if you play the Volcanion, you can gain an advantage in the Joltic Box mirror or the Terabox mirror, as well as into the other one from like whichever side, right? So I think Volcanion in those 2 decks specifically is like a really underrated card right now, especially considering that I expect both Terabox and Joltic Box to increase in play based on like recent results. So that's a really cool one. Uh, yeah, I like the Volcanion. If I play
Awesome.
Joltic Box this weekend, it's likely that there will be a Volcanion in my list. So, um, and then the last question was the net deck thing.
Yeah.
I will go a step further than Jake and say that if you as a player are at a point where you're like, I'm going to net deck a 60, you should not change more than like 1 or 2 cards, because likely you do not have enough experience with the deck to understand what the cards you are taking out are there for to extensive enough of a point that you can like make these changes and still be successful. So don't do that. That being said, if you're grabbing a Goldango list, like if you're taking Grant Shen's Dango Pult, right? Probably put Jamming Tower in it. But don't throw 2 Crispins in the deck and be like, perfect, now I'm a Dragapult deck too. Like, clearly the deck is not built to do that. And if you don't know the ethos behind the deck building, you certainly should not be changing the core identity of it last minute.
And then Hunter, same questions for you.
So I have three things where going from the least crazy to the most crazy. I think that Jamming Tower is a very good card to run right now. Very helps the Gardevoir matchup in a lot of decks like Dragapult. You should probably be running 1 Jamming Tower. And then next, I was thinking Farigiraf in Terabox, which Wancho just won the I think the
Master
whatever
Ball or
tournament.
something.
The Master Ball, yeah. He won the whole tournament with the Terabox and Farigiraf. I think that Farigiraf is very good into Gardevoir, and it's very good into just any basic deck, like even like Joltic. Even though they run the Galvantula, having to get the Galvantula out or just the Galvantula out.
Well, you sniped the Joltic too.
You just snipe the Joltics, yeah. So you're just fine. So the Galvantula just doesn't matter. So I think Farigiraf's a very good card, and very slept on right now. And then, in my opinion, probably the craziest one is I think that in some like maybe like Terabox or like even like if you're considering Terapagos, I think that like a Ruffian might not be that. So just like because you can't run the because you don't want to bump your own stadium, running the Ruffian to bump the Bravery Charm off of like a Drifloon might not be that.
Ruffian discards a special energy and a tool, right?
Yeah.
There's no way that's better than just playing Jamming Tower, right?
In a deck like Terapagos, though, you don't want to discard your bench, though.
Is that always true?
I like playing Jamming Tower in Terapagos, so you can discard your bench.
I agree. Yeah, I think I agree. It's like broken in Terabox especially. Like in Terabox, having jamming in Terabox is like super broken. And the highest placing Terabox list at every single major since the format has started, they have played Jamming Tower. I won't speak to Terapagos Buffalon. I have not played games with it, but at least Terabox, I think jamming is like exclusively better.
That's fair. I just was testing out the card a couple days ago. I think the card's interesting. I don't know if it's the correct tech, but I think it's not as. I think it's people aren't giving it.
That's fair.
And then, what was the question? We already. Yeah, I think we nailed the net decking question into the ground. But
I agree with what Josh and Jake.
But what about prep, Hunter? Like, what prep did you do? What led you to going into Atlanta with the confidence and the skill to get top 16?
I mean, I did a lot of like metagaming with my friends. I was kind of just like talking about like, oh, what matchups. Like, I also am gonna go back to the question about meta share. I think that it's actually one of the most important things to focus on, especially to get a high placement, because you want to see what everyone else is playing. You want to go into the tournament with the highest percent win rate into like every deck in the room. Where even though short tournaments are bigger now, where you can just hit 9 Joltics and it wouldn't be like super like surprising just because it's such a big, vast metagame. I still believe that making it so you have the highest percentage of having like a favored matchup is very important going into it. And that's why I chose Toronto.
I think the key point, though, I'll push back a little bit, is that you don't actually care about your win percentage into the metagame. You care about your win percentage against what you're going to play against at the tournament. Mm-hmm. And what you're going to play against at the tournament is statistically not the same as what the meta share looks like. Because like if you're doing well at the tournament, what you're going to play against is going to be identical to the day 2 metagame, not the day 1 metagame. And if you're like really at the top tables, what you're hitting is identical to the top 32 metagame, not the whatever metagame. So I do agree metagame is super important, but just the overall metagame, unless you're like expecting to go 5-4 at the tournament, like you probably want to care about some other metagame than just the day one metagame.
So I would say though that at least the metagame like Dragapult and Gardevoir, that percentage is still going to be very similar to what the day 2 percentage is going to be. So it's still very like you play your deck like to make sure, oh, I'm having a decent matchup as Dragapult, I'm having a decent Gardevoir, and I just believe that you should tech for the metagame, see what the like, and you're gonna know those decks are gonna obviously. So just make sure you have good matchups of those decks.
Yeah, the top, typically the top 2, top 3 most popular decks in day 1, at least right now, the most popular decks are also often the best decks, I'd say, like Gardevoir and Dragapult, but it's not always like that, because sometimes the best decks are decks that like people aren't playing very popularly, but I feel like right now the most popular decks
Zoroark
are also the best decks. Yes, and we're also maybe gonna see some Zoroark do well this weekend, which Zoroark does have reason, you know, it has good matchups that are reasons to play it. But I think we're gonna wrap things up there. So thank you to Jake, Josh, and Hunter for being here. I'll leave links to all of their Twitters in the description down below. And thanks for watching. I'll see you next time here on Celio's Network.